Now, without further delay, let's begin today's event, again sponsored by Backbase and hosted by American Banker. I'd like to introduce your moderator for today, and that is Mike Perkowski. Mike, you have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's webinar. We're glad that you could take time out of your busy day to learn more about this topic, digital transformation, build or buy. Before we go any further and begin our program, I do want to take this moment to again acknowledge Backbase for sponsoring today's program and thank them. We appreciate their support. So today we're fortunate to have two expert speakers who are going to cover this topic and who are going to take some of your questions at the back end of our program today. Yogesh Makwana has more than 20 years of experience in leading digital innovation and transformation programs for Fortune 100 customers. Yogesh has managed a global team of skilled digital platform and engineering professionals across multiple platforms to deliver strategic digital transformation initiatives and is experienced in planning and executing integrated digital transformation roadmaps, leading buy versus build strategies for customers to meet their business and technology goals. We're also going to hear from Vincent Bezemer, Senior VP for the Americas at Backbase. Vincent has 23 years experience in financial services technology space, including 8 years at Backbase, where he held a series of management positions before his most recent assignment in 2020. Vince previously held a number of executive positions in the industry in sales engineering, field operations, liaison management, and executive consulting. We're fortunate to have both of these gentlemen here today. They have a wealth of knowledge that they're going to share with you today and help you learn more about this particular topic. So let's get started. I'm going to turn the program over to our first presenter, Vincent Bezemer. Vince, the floor is now yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike, and thanks everybody for attending. I really appreciate you taking some time away from your schedule to learn about this particular topic. So today we will try to help you answer the question, should I build or should I buy? And also offer a new perspective on that, right? One perspective that either allows you to do more and compete like a national bank, or basically do more with less if you already have all the investments made in engineering and in digital transformation. How can you really optimize that? So not just guidance and recommendations, but really also the how that we try to answer today. So that's it. Let's dive in. So if you take a look at the larger landscape, the one thing that all these major brands have in common is that in their battle to become the preferred app, many disrupted an entire industry, right? And that was all based on a convenience play. Uber, you click a button and you get transportation. Netflix, you click a button, you get content, or you click a button and you get food. And what makes these brands so strong and what they all have in common is that they are extremely platform oriented. And that is obviously something that I think we can all learn from in a banking context. So there we go. Before we dive into this slide, I do want to remember everybody that about 30 years ago, really when the internet came up, banks were actually the first ones to embrace that, which was quite remarkable, right? But what they did was really to take a look at like what branch-based processes and further channels do we have and transform them kind of one at a time. So it first started obviously with web banking, then it went into mobile banking, then they digitized some parts of the call center, and really all one at a time. And that incremental, almost like Band-Aid investment that is created, or that has created this fragmented technology stack that most banks are suffering from, that created a lot of technical debt, right? And if you really peel back a couple of layers deeper, you really see that they still are operating with a very bloated operating model around digital. And typically that model really allows you or prevents you from dealing with customer experiences. And really, if you want to move faster and really be on top of that, it becomes incredibly expensive, right? So if we dive a little bit deeper in that, you can really say that that traditional banking model, the one that is created with Band-Aids and moved into digital, will not survive. you simply have competitors with much, much, much higher efficiency scores, with much lower overhead that you have to compete with. So we really feel that this is the end of the old school digital banking age, right? So on the left here, you see this traditional banking model, silo-based, legacy app-based, and simply these solutions are typically not designed to effectively compete in this platform area. If you now also take a look at the back office, how do you digitize all these older systems of records, right? And that's a part of what we are looking to address today. So diving into that, on the right-hand side, you see that the platform play really is all about orchestrating the customer engagement, right? Helping customers in their daily life. Think about like a customer life cycle, if you will. What are the key moments in that life cycle where you need to be there from an institution perspective? And let me give you just a very simple example, right? Whenever I need a mortgage, I first check with my own institution, but most often they're not competitive from a rate perspective, and I go just rate shopping. So my bank is actually pushing me away from their institution by not recognizing when I need them at the most, right? So having that customer-centric approach, you see in that first circle around the customer, is that the customer needs to be able to pick any type of touch point, whether that is digital, whether that's in the branch, whether it's call center, advisor, or maybe even a combination of all of these things. As long as you power those with the same underlying platform, you can create or digitize all services and bring them to the customer in wherever channel or wherever they want you to find them, right? In the second circle, you see your products and the services, right? They are provided and are basically enabled for your customer. So you're tailoring the right service to the right customer at the right moment in time. Again, that customer lifecycle thinking. This is what we as Backbase feel is the engagement banking revolution. We really feel that the market is significantly going to change there. It's almost like a paradigm shift from traditional banking and its operating model to an operating model that is more customer-centric. So if we take a look on how that is going to work, then you obviously immediately see that it's no longer, as time moves on, to increase your digital savviness. It's not about the technology you pick, the vendors that you pick. It's all about creating a digital-first operating model, right? And one of the key decisions, and basically as always, is are we going to buy or are we going to build, right? And I think that this is a paradigm that we've all kind of struggled with in the past. And both of them have a bunch of pros, but also a bunch of cons. And we will double click on that in the next section. So building for once gives any financial institution the full control of the platform, of the infrastructure, and the degree to which you want to customize it, right? You can really create distinct, unique experiences. But they require massive teams. And Yogesh, maybe you can double click on that for us a little bit more.
Yeah. Thanks, Vince, and thanks everyone for joining the webinar. I would go deeper in what does it mean by building the platform. So if I go to the next slide, you can see that as a FI CIO, I would argue that none of the platforms out there can address my capability needs or functionality needs, and also I need my own user experience, which reflect my brand identity. And bring that or build that loyalty with the customer. What I would think is, if I go with build option and I look at the pros of building my own platform ground up from scratch, I get full control of my user experience. I get full control of selecting a tech stack that my talent or my teams are most comfortable with. I also have full control on customizing the platform. I can build my own journeys and build third-party and API integrations to enable certain functionalities. But as a con, soon you understand that there are so many hidden costs of doing a pure build of a platform. And those hidden costs are multifaceted. In the Great Resignation era, where there's a talent war, it's very hard to find the talent who can build this platform for a year or two, and then maintain it for the rest of the life of the platform, which is anywhere between 5 to 10 years. There's also a challenge of building and reinventing the wheel for a lot of core services, which do not give you a differentiating factor. As a CIO or a FI, I would rather invest my time and energy and effort in building journeys and functionality which differentiates me from other FIs in my space, rather than building the same core services which are commoditized and do not differentiate and hit your bottom line or top line in that case. So while build has a lot of benefits on having full control, or at least getting a sense of full control on the user experience and the functional roadmap, there's also a big cost that you have to pay for that. And the journey can take anywhere between a couple of years to more. And then you have to make sure that you have a team who has built it, remains intact for maintaining it for the next 10 years or so of its life. If I go to the next slide, there's also an iceberg problem. And by that, we mean that when you start this build journey, you only focus on few of the key things which you think are in your control, the digital front end or the user experience, the end-to-end channel, omni-channel experience, or even the integration with third parties. What we don't understand, and we soon realize when we embark on this build journey, is there's a big amount of work that's required, which is all beneath the surface, and our organization and FIs are not ready for embarking on a full build journey because of these challenges that they face over the journey. And some of them are mainly adopting the agile delivery or adopting the full nimble CI/CD for the application deployment and delivery, which means you have an ability within the organization to roll out iterative functionalities instead of a big bang approach, for example. You also have a challenge of monolith legacy applications and architecture, which has been accumulated over the last 10, 15 years. And building a UI or an omnichannel experience on top of it is not an easy task to embark on. There are other challenges as well when it comes to handling the business processes and making sure that we're not just putting a lipstick on this old system, but we also change the end-to-end business processes to adopt digital at every level, and then roll out the applications which truly give the omni-channel experience to the customer. So if you go look at the complete end-to-end landscape of build scenario, you can see there's a lot of hidden costs and hidden challenges that are only unearthed when you embark on that journey. And instead of doing that, we learn from the lesson that pure build is not a valid solution unless you have 120 people who are just dedicated to this transformation for 2 years. And even then, I would say they would be spending a lot of time in building core services and then get to a point where they start building differentiators after that. So
yeah, Yogesh, I always wonder, like, even if you can, should you, right? What is the value in doing all of this stuff yourself?
Great question, Vince. I would argue, why would you build services which do not bring that brand loyalty or differentiating or invest in journeys and capabilities which do not set you apart from your competitors? And there are platforms, and I'm sure you will talk about it in great length, which do give you a good starting point, the baseline core services, and then allow you to build on top of that. So I think with that, we can segue to the buy option, and Vince, you can help us understand how to embark on this, look at this buy option.
Yeah, I think everybody in the webinar already knows what most of the pros and cons are from a buy perspective, right? You typically can innovate a little bit faster. You can bring those innovations to market faster, and you can really select the vendors and the organizations that understand your pain, and you can maybe do more than what your skill set allows you to do, the in-house skill set that you have created. So also a lot of these partners, they have already won the talent for war battle, so you're basically outsourcing that to them as well. But you're obviously getting something back that is highly cookie cutter, right? And it's a little bit difficult here because you have one group of providers that sometimes are acquired by a monolith, and then that innovation stagnates in the future. And then you also have organizations that understand how important it is to bring something innovative to market. But if you think about it, 80% of what you're looking to do, and that's also what our research shows, 80% of these banking services that you have are purely transactional. There's very limited space to even differentiate there. The other remaining 20%, yeah, those are your key differentiators, right? So while you have your build option, like you guys walked you through already, and whether it's technically feasible, it is a huge investment if you also need to take care of that 80%. We believe that it's much better to focus on that 20%. So why waste time, effort, and money to trying to differentiate yourselves on something that is already transactional, right? So outsourcing that to a capable third party really makes a lot of sense. I think another really big pro of the buy strategy is that you're not really beholden by the limitations of your tech team. And that could be either by skill or simply by availability. Right? So you can really accommodate the business needs that you find yourself there. So a buy option can be extremely useful. It can help you lower your cost, and it can help you innovate. And it's obviously not limited by your own skill sets and your resources. But again, cookie cutter, you can't deeply customize the experiences. You're always beholden by adopting a roadmap. And we feel that if you really want to make a difference for your members or for your customers, you need to have some of that control yourself. So let's dive into that just a little bit more and advance the slide here. You see that there are three major categories that I just quickly want to double click on and really give you maybe some thoughts that you really haven't considered before. Obviously, when I cannot deeply customize the experiences and I'm working with off-the-shelf journeys and screens, you really need to see these almost as a starting point, as an accelerator. And once you have them in place, you can start iterating on top of that. But a cookie cutter rarely allows you to do so. And again, unless you're willing to wait for a roadmap or even trusting a vendor on that roadmap. The second category here is if you cannot really tie everything together from a channel perspective, then it's really going to be hard, right? This game and also that iceberg that your guest just showed shows you clearly that it's not just about UX and UI on the top end and APIs that ties you into the back office. It's also about process management, about harvesting data, about having a customer 360, that whether I am logging in or a team member is logging in, everybody has that same view of the customer and you can service them better and therefore differentiate better from a competitive perspective. The last part that I want to double click on is really a lot of these business functions that are almost offered to you in a buy context of a take it or leave it mindset, right? You either like it or you don't. And if you don't, you have a big problem. So you either learn to accept it or learn to deal with it, or you find another vendor maybe in the future that can provide that to you. And every time you move this vendor or these vendors, you're basically crossing a chasm, as I like to call it, right? You have to de-invest in everything that you have already done. You need to do change management to adopt something new, not just for the tech team, but also for the operational teams. And that is extremely, extremely costly. And that's really where a lot of the hidden costs for a cookie cutter solution are really coming from, because you don't have that agility to react to what your customers need, and you don't have that clear change management to get into a future state. So going back to our dilemma of build versus buy and what should I do, we do want to offer you a different perspective, right? There is indeed a third option. And I think a lot of people are not fully aware that that option exists. So I do quickly want to double click on that a little bit, right? So going back to the beginning, you probably wondered like, oh Lord, another vendor that was talking about Uber and Netflix and all that stuff. I did that for a purpose, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to transform your financial institution and you want to become a bank truly that people love, you need to have more flexibility. You need to have more control over the operating model. So in the Backbase paradigm, we are basically seeing, hey, there is Backbase out of the box. There are a whole bunch of apps and journeys that you can adopt as is. You can go fast. You can be relatively competitive. And on the other end of the spectrum, you basically have what we call accelerated build. So it's not fully custom developing anymore. It's not investing in that 80% of capabilities that are transactionals and don't provide value to you anyways. Think about, identity and security management, audit trailing. Yeah, you need to have it, but why build it if you can also get it from the shelf? So that's where our solution can morph into that accelerated build. We give you all those components and you focus only on the 20% that creates that differentiation. And that's actually the model that many of our larger customers are embracing. They have all the capabilities, but they realize no sense in investing. Give our team members the toolkit to accelerate and focus on that differentiating power. And if you're more on the adopting side and you basically just want to go fast to market in an accelerated fashion with something that is truly compelling, then you find yourself a little bit in this world that I'm outlining here. So when you start in a project with Backbase or with a platform in general, you can really kickstart your project because a lot of these things are already there. They're transactional by nature. You need to have them, low differentiation as we already stated, and you can really get that accelerated time to value. From there, you can say, hey, in that process, I have learned a lot about the team, about the vendor. I've learned a lot about my audiences and how they're responding to it. So I can fill in some of the gaps or add some of these additional things in. And it could be a third-party fintech. It could be something that you develop yourself. So as you iterate in that agile process over that baseline, you're becoming more and more sophisticated, reaching that target state where everything is exactly the way your business likes to have it, knowing that you did it on a platform. So there's no technical debt, there's ongoing innovation and investments into that platform that can grow with you into the future. So maybe a little bit of a corny analogy, but I often equate this to a DJ at a mixing panel, right? For all the decisions that you have, either that is a capability within a line of business, or maybe on top of the overall line of business, or maybe even a brand or a digital speedboat or a digital lending branch that you have, you need to be able to make these adopt, extend, or accelerated by decisions on any level. And that's, I think, the beauty of a thinking platform. You can really say, hey, for retail, I just want to be a fast follower. I don't need to differentiate there. I just need to be have enough to be competitive like a national bank, as we stated in the beginning. But for business banking, I really want to be differentiated. I want to have a lot of third-party fintechs, so I want to have a lot more control. So I'm opening up that channel and I'm giving my team full controls. But maybe in there, you do want to say, hey, I want to take this entitlement piece off the shelf so that I have these accelerated components. So this is not a platform is not a paradigm just for the context of like, hey, retail banking or just for the context of wealth management. It's a notion of how you have created this digital operating model or digital first operating model and how you really realize that in driving that to the market. So I'm sure that there are a lot of questions there, but I think the main question is really what is the right choice for you? So maybe, Yogesh, you can take us through that.
Yeah, and at some point, I would also ask you, Vince, that's very interesting how you explained that. What's the procurement strategy? How should we go about finding and procuring that kind of platform that can give you that acceleration and still allow to build on top of it and give you flexibility?
Yep. Yeah, that's a great question, Yogesh, because it is super difficult. Many organizations are trained and conditioned to think and build versus buy. So now you have this third option. So first you need to be very familiar with what is this option, what is it to you and what is it not to you, and how can you get your organization behind that. So I think what this really drives towards is talking to these platform vendors, understand their offerings, and also understand the change management that is necessary to really operationalize it. And with that, you can slowly start creating your operating model that fits you at this particular point in time. Because you guys remember that mixing panel, it could also mean that your needs are changing in the future. Maybe that bank that is a business bank with a retail problem, as I often say it, maybe they're merging with a full-blown retail bank, and retail all of a sudden becomes more important, right? So now I can tweak that dial like the DJ and basically change my operating model ever so slightly to accommodate for that strategic change. So I think answering or embarking on this journey really is with letting yourself be educated by platform vendors and then start to understand what is the operating model that fits you today and how do we slowly transform that to an operating model that fits you in the future.
Yeah, that's great. So what's the right choice for you? When it comes to the accelerated build or platform-led build where you're making a buy decision, but you're not restricting yourself to just be in the black box for that platform, but also have full flexibility and ability to create your own experiences, add your own capabilities, and also create your own brand identity on top of it so that you have the loyalty and relationship with the customer. There are three factors, in our opinion. One is how can we look at the capabilities and create that capability map, and also take every single process in planning how we take the platform or an accelerated build and then cater it or customize it for our needs. It's not an easy solution, or there's no perfect platform out there for which can take care of all your requirements in totality. So we really need to go deeper in making the decision how many capabilities we can map and find overlap with the platform's capability, and then where we see those differentiating and unique functionalities which are very specific and critical for our banking needs or our banking identity, and then create using the platform guardrails. The other key point is having an open architecture. If we go with that accelerated build where we take a platform, we really need to make sure that it supports an open architecture. So again, we're not completely dependent on the vendor or the platform for bringing third parties or even additional capabilities, but allows us to innovate as FIs on top of it by bringing our own lean development teams, and also our own FIs and fintechs of our choice to innovate and add more capabilities. So again, a very good hybrid solution where we have an acceleration for all the key services, but then it allows us to innovate on top of it by adding more fintechs or third parties and innovative capabilities on top of it. The last one is, how do we evolve our digital value proposition? Making sure that we take advantage of both, best of both worlds, build as well as buy scenario, and fully take that as an accelerated build. Cut down the time to build commodity services and then fix the architectural problems that we have created in the pure build manner. So we take the best of the both world approach, and then create only those additional capabilities which are truly needed for our business. So with that, yeah, go ahead, Vin.
Yeah, Yogesh, actually, I started to realize while you were talking, and also one of the questions in the chat, like how does this really help enable an FI with an accelerated speed to market, right, or time to value, or whatever you want to label it? And can you, for instance, accelerate that even further with third parties of other fintechs to the platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the answer is yes. Now, a lot of these platforms do come with third-party integrations, and they have their own marketplace, their own ecosystem of partners. But again, what kind of open architecture and ability for innovation these platforms provide is a key decision that we have to make when we are selecting the platform. So the answer is yes. The third-party fintechs, additional innovative services or FI services can be integrated with the platform when it comes to expanding that ecosystem beyond just the platform marketplace, for example. So, and that's a key decision factor, or the key prerequisite that anybody should be looking when they're selecting or looking for a platform-led approach, an accelerated build using a buy-led decision, for example.
Yeah, so, I completely agree with you guys. And maybe to actually double click on that, a lot of times when we get involved with a financial institution, it's not just about revamping digital. What we often find, Yogesh, we often find that there is a lack of readiness, right? Certain APIs are not available, or maybe not even thought about. And often that leads to like, okay, hey, maybe we should shift into the cloud. And that cloud decision often leads to another decision, like how do we deal with our identity management, and how are we going to do scaling, and how we're going to set up the DevOps, and who's going to own that for us, and maybe even move to Agile sometimes still, right? We come across a lot of those types of scenarios. So often an actual timeline or a time to value timeline is, we obviously fight hard to reach it, but we obviously a lot of times find that, hey, there are some of these underlying topics that need answers, and often Backbase doesn't really come in just as a technology vendor, but really as a change agent and helping you to ask the right questions at the right time in that transformative journey. Wouldn't you agree, Yogesh?
Well, very well said. Yeah, absolutely agree, Vince. And the list goes on. There's a plethora of things that one has to take care of when it comes to really building this platform, which will obviously go to production and you will be rolling it out to your members. And it's not just the customer-facing side of things that we're talking about. We're also talking about the overall ecosystem, which is customer or member-facing applications across lines of businesses, but also the employee-facing side of applications. So how do we make sure that we are investing on one single platform which takes care of the overall ecosystem and not pushes us to build now point solutions for each and every channel, or one for customer member facing ones and the other one for employee facing. So I think that's also a key decision factor for all the FIs out there. When they're looking at platforms, they also should think, are we really buying a single unified platform which takes care of all the aspects of the member journey and employee journey, or again, we have to invest in multiple point solutions?
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, before we dive into the questions, and I see that that many people are already entering questions in the chat, so please keep the questions coming. If we don't have time for them, we will address them a little later. But just two final slides before we dive into the Q&A. This is obviously really why Backbase exists, right? We exist to help you architect banking around the customers and adopting this kind of platform mindset, if you will, in that first center around the customer, really making sure that all their needs are covered in a seamless experience. Not just the long neck transactional stuff, but also the long tail stuff. Make that accessible through whatever channel customers want. And then from a customer lifecycle perspective, whether you're acquiring, servicing, retaining, or maybe cross-selling, whether that happens within a line of business or across a line of business. Imagine me being a CEO. I have a checking account. I probably also have some business accounts. I maybe have some FX accounts. You know, how can you recognize me across that landscape of services that may or may not be siloed in lines of businesses, right? So with that, there's obviously an obligation from any vendor and also from Backbase to help you get started small, prove the platform out, and then from there start growing to the point where you have that one platform that can power everything. And really not just from a pure digitization perspective, whether it's digital experiences or digital processes, but also help you find the right operating model now and allow you to shift into the future as well. Sorry, I realized that the slide was not building up properly. My apologies for that. And finally, if you take a look like how we are doing that, to Yogesh's earlier point, we really feel that a unified software platform should exist for the customer and for the employees. Everybody having the same views, all the lines of businesses, all segments directly on that same platform, in the full customer lifecycle and connecting that lifecycle to whatever type of technology you have in the back office. We really don't care how old your core is, what type of fintech partners you're working with, or what your ambitions may or may not be on the open banking side. This engagement banking platform should be able to fulfill all of those. So with that said, Mike, maybe you can lead us through some of the questions.
Absolutely. Thank you both for your insights, and let's see if we can get to a few more questions from our audience members today. All right, so first question, of course, always important to talk about the financial issues, and our audience member wants to know, how do you keep costs in check in an accelerated build scenario?
Yeah, maybe Yogesh, you want to take that first?
Sure, yeah. And I also see a couple of questions which are related to that, so I'll maybe try to address them as well. So how do you keep a check on the cost? The first point on that is, when you buy a platform, obviously you pay an upfront fee for the platform, but you don't have to build the army of developers or put a team, multiple teams for building different capabilities which are again addressed or already delivered by the platform. So I would say you definitely, if you have an aspiration to take a platform as an accelerated build and then create or develop additional capabilities on top of it, the platform allows you to take the open source frameworks that we have built on top. So for example, AngularJS or Kotlin or Surfx, etc., which are all industry standard. You can still go and find the resources and people who are capable of building on top of those capabilities and architectures, and then create a lean team of those talent and skills to now build additional capabilities on the platform. So as Vince pointed out, 80-20, you have 80% of capabilities delivered and already in the box from the platform. And then those additional 20% of capabilities which are truly differentiating your identity, you can build using that lean team. Now, you can also make sure that this team is capable of maintaining and also delivering the capabilities using the platform guardrails and design systems, and make sure that you invest in the talent for having the maintenance and also the longevity of platform using the team that you've invested in. So you don't have to have multiple Scrum teams or squads to build the capabilities anymore, as you would do in a true build scenario. But I would recommend having a lean team, which can now take this platform as a starting point and then add more capability as and when needed for your business requirements and processes.
Yeah, I completely agree, Yogesh. And maybe to offer a perspective that I pretty much see every day when I'm visiting customers, I see larger institutions, for instance, when I ask the question, like, how many people do you have in digital? And they tell me, like, oh, we have 1,000 people in digital. Then really I'm already thinking, okay, the majority of those people are basically there to maintain or fulfill the technical debt, right? And they're really spending a lot of time on things like security entitlements, audit trailing, the standard transaction caching mechanisms, and all that type of stuff. So in my mind, that really means leads to the next question: how many people do you have truly in innovation that truly help you differentiate? And if that answer for you is 80-20 or even 60-40, if you will, there is your business case, right? So you can actually apply a lot of cost savings to this transformation journey. For smaller institutions that are basically looking like, okay, but how do we compete with these national banks, right? And we want to be digitally savvy, but we can only afford one Scrum team. Yeah, the message there is the Backbase apps out of the box are really industry leading already as is. So you can see that as an initial milestone that you can achieve while you're basically building up your knowledge, your organization, that can then from there take ownership and really drive the platform into that next phase. And we have customers being extremely successful with no people. We have customers being extremely successful with maybe 1 or 2 Scrum teams. And yeah, we also have a couple of customers that have hundreds of people on the Backbase platform. But again, it's not so much about the Backbase platform as it is the operating model in which you capture the Backbase model and what you want, or the Backbase platform and what you want it to do for you. And obviously, we can help you with that discussion.
And I would also add just one thing on top of what Vince you said. The FIs who also look for having no teams altogether, and they look for a solution which can get them out very quickly. I would also say I'm very excited about Backbase's managed hosting, for example, because sometimes you have this dilemma of whether we can adopt cloud without having a lot of past knowledge on the cloud transformation or cloud adoption. And Backbase gives you a quick adoption by offering managed hosting, for example, so that you don't have to worry about directing teams of DevOps and cloud experts, and you can go ahead and hand that or unburden yourself by just subscribing to managed hosting. And the same thing for managed services, where the FIs don't have to build these lean teams also if they don't want to go and compete for talent in the market, and they can just subscribe for managed services, which allows them to continue to innovate by not having to put these teams together, but just offload or unburden themselves by having Backbase do it on their behalf.
Okay, you've both done a good job in talking about this balance, build versus buy, and it's very relevant for the next question, who wants to know, how do you define the right strategy? Which I take away from, what are the key decision points that you have to confront and deal with as you go down your decision path? Yeah, that's a great question, and unfortunately, there is no one single answer that will work for any type of institution. You can imagine a smaller institution, typically the communication lines are shorter, and you can get more C-level people into a discussion around the operating model and maybe even around the business model that for most institutions are still immensely antiquated, right? For larger institutions, it's more of a journey, right? And I think at the end of the day, you basically want to do 2 things. You want to start on the journey to get you what you need and what you're chartered to do.
And I think that's the beauty of a platform, because you can get started with whatever project you're running. Let's say that you're a big institution, you're running an entitlements project or something like that. Let's just get started with the platform. And while you engage with the vendor and while you roll out that initial project, you can find the learnings and you can build a track record to really lead your organization in a digital transformation discussion. And the digital transformation discussion is not a discussion that is solely around, okay, how are we going to spend our digital funds, but really also like how can we architect banking around the customer, and how does that impact all the different departments. So I would not say, Mike, that there is one like checklist that you can follow and boom, you're going to be a digital leader. It's highly dependent on the organization, on how much clout you have in the organization, and really which steps we need to set to prove ourselves to earn the right to become the full-blown end-to-end platform. Maybe you have additional thoughts to that?
Yeah, I do. I would also say that by no means digital transformation is an easy journey, right? And that's why I think it's very important to find the right partner who can guide you from the previous experiences to how to shorten that journey, also find success towards the end of the tunnel. And that journey never ends. You go live for the first time taking a platform-led approach, but then you also continue to iterate and innovate on top of it for the rest of the life of the platform and the application. So I think it's a very critical decision to be made, and I think that's where the partner can truly play that role of guiding you throughout this journey and making sure that you don't fall in the pitfalls of other FIs who have taken a different journey in past, and you learn from the experiences and not make those mistakes yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I have much more to say there, Mike, but I see that there are a whole bunch of questions, so maybe we can dive into the next one.
Sure. Okay, so you both talked a lot about the fact that this is not just about technology, as important as it may be, of course, but a lot of it is around people and process. So this next question is very relevant. How do you go from establishing requirements to make that decision and then to build out your project to actually running a project like this? How do you make that transition?
Yeah, that's a great. Okay, go ahead, you guys.
No, I can start with that. Vince definitely add on that. I would say again, as Vince said, there's no cookie cutter checklist, and every FI is different than the other, right? So you truly need to understand what your member base really cares about and how you can solve or simplify their financial journey and relationship with them to have a customer lifetime value over a period of time. So how do you make sure that you find the right platform? How do you make sure that you invest in the right partner? And then obviously the time that will take for you to go out and roll those applications out. So there's no one single list, but then you have to come up with the requirements or so-called KPIs that truly matter for your FI or your bank, and then put those as success criteria or factors that you have to build the whole strategy around. If you, as a FI, if you really understand the KPIs, whether it is acquisition or retention or member experience, then after that you take that framework to build the granular requirements, the capability level, the tech stack level requirements, and so on and so forth. Vince, I don't know if you want to add on top of it.
Yeah, I think, it also depends a little bit who you are and what type of charter you have for your organization, right? If you're a CTO or a CDO, I think you can think in broader terms of digital transformation. But I think for most of us, at the end of the day, the business is asking you something and you need to deliver against it, right? So I would say take something smaller that is a real business pain that you are funded against, and deliver that, but deliver that with a platform approach in mind, right? So in other words, you're delivering value to the business, you're building that credibility up, and then slowly you can start leading the business and helping to actually handing them the questions that they probably even haven't thought about, right? And that's also how you become a change agent, and maybe even how you can make promotions inside of your organization. So do something small, prove yourself, grow from there, learn from there. And like also at Backbase, if we see project delays, it often happens because in that journey we find that there are a whole bunch of sub-questions that we also need to answer that are eventually foundationally better for the future of the FI. So give yourself time, do something small, iterate on top of that, and do so knowing that you have this end goal in mind. And obviously, we at Backbase, also others out there, can help you go through that process.
Okay, very good. So ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our program for today. If your question was not answered in the Q&A part of the program, someone from Backbase will get back to you as soon as possible after this program ends. I want to thank our presenters, Vincent and Yogesh, for sharing their ideas and their insights and recommendations for you. We appreciate them being collaborative in this perspective and doing everything that they can to help you be successful in making your own build versus buy decisions. Again, we want to thank Backbase for sponsoring today's program. We appreciate their support. And last but not least, we want to thank all of you who attended today's program. We're glad you could take time to learn more about this topic. And we hope that you'll join us for a future web seminar brought to you by American Banker and its partners. So on behalf of your host, your sponsor, and your presenters, thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We hope you have a great and safe day.
Thank you.
Thank you.